thinking about your common life at this moment, thinking about the apostles' teaching in his moment, thinking about the good news that God is a finisher of what God starts. It all puts me in mind of my older brother, Jack, 11 years my senior. He, the athlete in our family growing up, weight lifter, basketball player, marathon runner. Stunning proposition that one would set out to deliberately run 26 miles by choice. I'm lucky to get my grass mowed and not be winded. But over and over again in his teens and 20s and early 30s, my brother Jack was a runner of marathons. Any others among us who have said 26 miles?
I got one half.
Half is twice more than me. Not being an athlete, I've inquired over the years of my brother how it was so that he could go the distance. We talked about many things: carbohydrates, stretching, shoes. What sticks out in my memory, though, and what resonates with the apostle, is his recognition one day to me, my brother, that the hardest part for him in a marathon was here. It was the mental, maybe even spiritual moment where, gathered in that cluster of anxious starters gathered at that line, anticipating in the mind all 26 miles and that finish line not yet seen, the hardest work, he said, of a marathon was up here. Will I make it? Did I train? Do I have the right shoes? Did I eat enough spaghetti last night? What if? What now? The Apostle Paul sits in Rome, an old man now, you see. He's not quite at the finish line, but he is darn close relative to the journey he has made thus far in the book of Acts. Remembered there, the witness of his interesting and jagged and strange 26 miles across years of apostolic ministry, starting churches and training up Christians and trying to tell the good news of Jesus' strange but provocative resurrection. See, he's at the almost end of that race now. In fact, he can say to Timothy elsewhere in the New Testament, I have finished the race. And he's looking back from house arrest. Paul was a troublemaker for Jesus. We have to come to peace with that as Presbyterians. Everything is solid and settled for us. But you see, for Paul, the fact that Jesus was alive meant you go and make trouble. You go turn the world right side up. Not everybody welcomes that, you see. So they've got him shackled at the end of his life. It's okay. Gives him time to write some emails. And he sends one back to the Philippians, and he says, I want you to know that I am confident of something. The one who began a good work in your midst. That is the same one who will see it through to completion. It's not just a finish line in the ancient Greek vocabulary that Paul borrows. It's not just scratching and crawling across the end, exhausted. It's a sense of wholeness, of shalom, of it is good, it is done. Our lives ache for that kind of completion. You know that I live in New Wilmington, on Neshannock Avenue there. I can think back a few summers ago to my neighbor who, in the summer season, hired some painters to repaint his 2.5-story home. I remember well the Monday morning when 6 or 7 of them descended upon his house and they were scraping and filling and patching and priming. The next morning, the same. I noticed Wednesday, though, that the number dropped to 4. And then by the end of the week, 2. And then I noticed the next Monday morning, 0, and then a week, and then maybe 1, and then another week. And finally, in those moments we have with our neighbors where lives connect and we catch up, I said, by the way, Ross, what's going on? What happened to those guys that were painting your house? Noticing that it was half done. Oh, he said, throwing his hands up in the air in a sighs too deep for word moment. You just can't find good help these days, he says to me. Amen? Amen. Is it not our corporate witness? Is it not our experience that things start so well in life and often play out? You just can't find good help these days. We are a people who start, we don't always finish. We see that littered across our lives. But let's not throw stones too far, or paintbrushes, as the case may be. Because when we look in our own lives, when we look in the spiritual mirror that our brother Jesus readily holds up before us, there is entropy there as well. Do we not carry in our bones many things that have played out? Many things started but not finished. Many places in the nooks and crannies of our psyche that ache for a finish line. Paul knew this. Let us not be triumphalistic about these older brothers and sisters in the New Testament as if they just spewed pixie dust across the Mediterranean world and everything was perfect and right. Read the book of Acts. Paul knew his troubles. For all the places where God used him as a blessing, he was beaten and accused, thrown out of town, rejected. We read about the churches that flourish in the New Testament. What we don't have in our canon is all those places that were started but never finished. It's a strange, mixed bag, this pilgrimage. Some things bloom, some things die. Who the heck knows what the Holy Spirit is up to except Paul now, looking back near the end of his race, can say, "Know of my confidence, Philippians. Know that God is a finisher. And so let your love live out of that promise. Let it expand and overflow out into the world. Let it walk tall with the confidence of Christ. Let your love be tempered with insight so that you actually go and bless rather than make it worse in the name of Jesus." Makes me think of our sisters and brothers down in the Enon Valley, right down there in the lower corner of Lawrence County, right on the Ohio line where the train tracks run through, and there's a little Presbyterian kirk there that's gotten older and smaller. It's the way of things these days. What I know, though, is that maybe a decade ago, not quite, enough souls in that flock looked around their community and recognized that people were hurting. There was a pinch point because of economics and unemployment. They could see it on the faces of their neighbors. And so someone had the bravery in a small session meeting to say, we should throw a meal. We should just welcome people into our social hall. Let's just get people together and serve them. And so they did it. And people came, and then they did it again the next week. And then you know how it works. There's a flywheel effect to goodness, and before they knew it, months had gone by, and every week, folks were gathering in the basement of that church, not just Presbyterians, folks, people, neighbors, strangers. Time goes along, a year, maybe, someone said, should we keep doing this or not? There was a holy pause. They said we should. Let's drop back to once a month, though, so that we can go the distance, 26 miles, after all. One paces oneself. And here they are all these years later, 20, 30 Presbyterians at the most, median age north of 60. I get it. But there they are, and I've been there. I've washed the dishes. I've served the chicken. The community is there gathered in that social hall, and people are laughing and talking, and no one's browbeating them with the gospel. It's just a space, a good, safe space for a community that has known its woes, seen its share of challenges. The pastor likes to tell me, every time we talk about it, that in most years this whole effort costs the church about $20, because inevitably congregation members are glad to donate and give and make it because it's not a tax, you see. It's the goodness of going the distance. Finishing what was started. I don't know how it is for you today. That's between you and the Holy Spirit. I don't know what is dead or broken or hurting in your life. Nor do I know this community well as you do. I would simply suggest that the resurrection is loose. It wants to make trouble. It wants to make upside down things right. The apostles' suggestion is simply we align ourselves with that we step into the race rather than stepping out. That we trust that God is a finisher. So that which has begun will be completed. So it's up to you to do with your Monday morning what you want. I'll be doing mine tomorrow as well. I might just suggest, though, that as you arise and greet the day, maybe you imagine yourself running a marathon. Life can feel like that on its own without my prompting. Maybe you just roll out of bed, put your feet on the floor, imagine yourself on that starting line all bunched up with those other anxious runners. You can't yet see the end. 26 miles is a long way, and there are corners, lots of corners. All I invite you to do, based on the teaching of our older brother apostle, is to feel the tug on your sleeve. It's crowded. You're not sure that tug's for you, but when you turn, you see a familiar face bunched up there with all those runners. You're pretty sure it's the face of Jesus. And he pulls you in because it's noisy and busy and anxious. And when you lean in, he whispers in your ear. Hey, he says, I got something to tell you. The race, it's rigged. It's rigged. I have rigged the race. You will finish. That has already been decided. My choice, he says. And just when that news begins to drain out of your body, everything that is tight and twisted and hard, and you think, well, sweet Jesus, I'm out of here then. No, he says, pulling you in yet closer. This is what you need to do for me, he says, today. Run, he says. Run. Steady now. Go. Run as if you've already won. Now scoot, church. Go. Share the good news. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.